even on this very principle. There was a chap who stood up and said, now that Pakistan has been created as a country for Muslims, shouldn't we be a country for Hindus? And this was debated and thrashed out, and the overwhelming view was that ours should be a civic nationalism of equal rights. Some people like pointing out that the word secular was interpolated only in 1976. But you can take the word secular out and the Constitution still remains a secular constitution, because the Constitution in here has a fundamental flaw in it, and that flaw is, it seems to assume that the nation of India is a territory called India, and the Constitution has been written for all the people on it. Wrong, they each said in their own words. Wrong. A nation is not a territory, it's a people, and the people of India are the Hindu people, and the Constitution should have been written only for a Hindu Rashtra.
So Hindutva, unfortunately or fortunately, is attributed to the mind of Savarkar when in fact it's not. So that's the first factual correction. Second, I wouldn't dare use the word criticism, because I would be stepping into too large shoes. I wouldn't do that. But my own impression of your book is that perhaps it takes a truncated view of what people crudely dub as Hindu nationalism. I've addressed certain parts of that actually as part of my book. The idea is to place the current movement and the awakening of this particular society within the larger canvas of what global scholarship refers to as decoloniality, which is to basically say that post-colonial societies are trying to shed the baggage of post-colonialism and wear the lens of decoloniality to be able to re-access their past and not recreate their past, but to re-inscribe certain values of the past in the institutions of the present and hopefully chart a more indigenous future. But it's not possible to completely create an indigenous future simply because it happens to be an integrated world. And that's the reality that you have to deal with and actively engage with. So the idea is to create perhaps a hybrid future which has a greater quotient of indigeneity as opposed to coloniality. Let me say this with as much humility as I can marshal at this point, that perhaps your previous book on the British colonial period, as well as this book, completely missed the scholarship of decoloniality, because unfortunately, Bharat's experience with colonialism is being approached with a blinkered vision, and I'm making a reference to a general school of thought, and I'm not making this personal at all. Because the idea that Hindu nationalism is fundamentally exclusionist and comes to the detriment of and at the peril of religious minorities in this country is to impose the guilt as well as the framework of European nationalism on Bharatiya consciousness. And every mistake and every folly and every massacre or every genocide which was perpetrated in the name of European nationalism is somehow consciously and unconsciously sought to be transposed onto Bharatiya reawakening. I do not wish to call it Hindutva, I do not wish to call it, let's say, any Twa, so to speak. I will simply call it Bharatiya Dharmic Civilizational Reawakening, which is what it translates to. The problem is, unfortunately, whenever this discussion starts, we seem to be fixated with certain personalities, which is Savarkar, so on and so forth. I am happy to completely discard Savarkar, and I'm sure this is going to get me a lot of hate mail, completely discard Savarkar to build a case for Hindu civilizationalism or Dharmic civilizationalism, because it is possible to do so. And the concept of Dharmic civilizationalism is much larger than any single individual. And to box it and lay it at the doors entirely of one particular person simply because he comes from an inconvenient political camp, so to speak, or espouses a certain cause that may not be politically correct, would be to do grave injustice to the society using one particular individual as the strawman of the argument. So therefore, it is my position, and I say this with all humility, that with due respect to Sri Savarkar and his contributions, because I've seen the tone as well as the manner in which you refer to him, I'm absolutely sure that it's not possible for us to glorify all parts of any individual. You would agree with that. Be it Mahatma Gandhi, or at least I refer to him as Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. I choose not to refer to him as Mahatma Gandhi.